Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, and Merry Christmas Eve, those who celebrate. To those who don't, fuck you. I am fully kidding. We appreciate all of you. But man, what a good joke. Good tidings to all, regardless of your faith or preference toward commercial holidays. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey.
This is the Two Nerds Podcast. Today we are discussing The Mummy. Why are we discussing The Mummy? Well, I think the quickest way to talk about that is to talk about who's cool. Which is going to be Passion Killer 711, DG, Destrucity KTL, On the Tip of Your Tongue, Drake Starstorm, Thomas Austin Jr., Kitty Holbrook, a guy from Ohio, he's among our trash elite, as well as Rob, who is the reason we're discussing this film. The enigmatic Rob has requested this come down from his lofty mountain, where he does not usually make requests of us, but has done so. And you're 2 for 2 on this, actually. This is 2 times Rob has requested a film. Both times they've been a movie you liked and actually have already seen.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Right?
But, yeah, before we talk about The Mummy, before we get into the film The Mummy, this is the 1999 Brendan Fraser film, we need to talk about what's crumpin'.
What's crumpin' with you, friend?
What is crumpin'? Lately, you and I have been doing a lot of stuff together, although I did spend a lot of time working on Wizards and Weisz, which is my pen and paper RPG, in the vein of other RPGs in the fantasy genre. If you sub to the Patreon, I believe at the $10 tier, maybe it's $15, it's $10. You can get playtest material for that, and you can try it out yourself if you're interested. I keep adding stuff to it until it looks publishable, and I'll need art for that, so that's a while off.
Well, if you do decide to do that, please let us know.
Yeah.
Give us feedback.
I love feedback.
We're excited to hear.
Also, speaking of feedback, if you want to let us know in the comments what's crumpin' with you, first of all, and secondly, we are, as of now, expired on the ECW Limited Series. Is there something else you guys would like to see in a limited series from me? Let me know. Or pop over to the Discord and join the conversation we have there. There's already been some suggestions. But, we've been doing a lot of stuff together, you and I. You've had some time off.
Yep. It's always nice when I get time off from the daily grind, because I get to hang out with my best friend more. You would think with us being roommates and living together for like 17 years... I would hang out with him a lot, and I do, but it's always nice to do it more.
The excuse of extra time is fantastic for us to actually play games together and do long-form stuff together, because, you know, you need that decompression time after a long, hard day's work, and there's only so much one can stick in there, and you need your own, like, separate time away from your friends. Even if you're in a relationship, you're not stuck to your wife or husband or what have you 24/7.
Or at least if you are, hopefully you're both very happy, but I am concerned for you.
Yeah, that's I don't know about that one. But, yeah, so we've been playing, just yesterday, I got back into World of Warcraft to enjoy for the, holiday season. While I got some more time with my friend, we got to play some Marvel Rivals together.
Marvel Rivals is fun, y'all.
It's a lot better with friends. I never got to play Overwatch. I played it a little bit with my last wife, but we were quite a distance apart, and it didn't add much. But playing it in the same room with a buddy, or I assume playing it with headsets on and chatting, it was really fun. And I feel like we did something else, my guy. What was that?
World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I thought there was a third thing, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Playing tabletop RPGs. We do that all the time.
We do. We have a lot of fun with that. Play testing the Wizards and Weisz as time goes. That's how I know what to change. Do you have any specific stories you want to share about the last, about what's been crumpin'?
Well, we've been hanging out a lot together, so that's what's been crumping with me. Is pretty much what's been crumping with you. Playing a lot of WoW with my friend, playing Marvel Rivals with my friend, playing TTRPGs with my friend. I spent basically an entire day holed up in my room, just relaxing from work stress, and just sort of vegging out on my own. That was nice. I don't do that very often, because normally if I only really have I have weekends off, and I have errands to run and chores to do and stuff like that. So it was nice to just basically burn a whole day on just bed rot, just hanging out in my own by myself, reading and not engaging with other humans.
So that's what's been crumping with us. Let us know what's been crumping with you. I will keep this part brief because this is, again, the 1999 movie, The Mummy. But spoiler-free review, all of the fun jokes I might have aside, I really enjoyed this. I think I would have liked it more if I'd seen it when it came out. But a lot of the early fight scenes weren't my bag. They were a lot of man fires gun, other man falls down, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but it didn't thrill me until the end. And there were a lot of more sword fighting scenes that I felt really excited about. I actually thought through the movie, man, this is very Star Wars. It would be nice if we could have the occasional lightsaber situation. And yeah, I got what I wanted out of it, so... How about yourself, my friend? What's your spoiler-free review of The Mummy?
I do like it more than him because I did watch it when it came out. This movie rocks. I love it. I loved it when I was a kid. I've seen it several times. I've listened to the director's commentary. The Mummy's a really fun movie. If you are the kind of person who takes movies very seriously, you might not like it.
It does have what people today would call the MCU flavor of a lot of humor.
What's also, it's very broad, it's very big, it's very old Hollywood. It is very much a loving send-up of an earlier time in film. So it makes use of some character tropes and that sort of thing that can come across a bit broad today. So I'll phrase it. And that's, they
like to be called women.
Hey! That's a joke in the movie.
It is. Yeah, that's why I said it.
But it's, I love this movie, and I think if you're the kind of person who likes fun movies, as opposed to, someone who only likes very serious, dour movies, you'll like The Mummy just fine if you haven't already seen it.
I would say it's a slightly less edgy, Indiana Jones, and not the second one, but the first and the third.
That is a different level. The second one is a different level of edgy from the other two.
It's a different film. But yeah, spoiler-free review aside, what can you spoil about The Mummy? They foreshadow pretty much everything that's...
There aren't really... Look, you see the screenshot? That's the movie.
Yeah. You mentioned old Hollywood, and that's absolutely something I picked up on, even though I'm not a huge fan. Yeah, actually, I haven't sat down and watched a lot of those movies. They're very dry. They're very long. I've seen bits of them, and I can recognize what old Hollywood looks like, and they are absolutely tapping into that Lawrence of Arabia style.
Well, it's based on a movie from the 30s.
Sure, yeah, that too.
Like a Boris Karloff movie from the 30s. They've made a lot of changes to it.
Yeah.
But it's... it does fun stuff that the modern sensibility regarding historical... depictions of historical cultures would find a little crass. It's a little bit... there's a point, we're edging into spoilers here. There's a point where the titular mummy, the bad guy, the Imhotep, he starts summoning the 10 plagues of Egypt. And considering those aren't a part of Egyptian mythology, they're a part of, later, shall we say, religious stories that are about Egypt. People would think maybe that's not great to do, but in the kind of movie The Mummy is, it's perfect and it rocks.
It was fine. I
mean, that's just an act. It's like an example.
I can see people who would be upset by that. I would also advise those people to take a step back and breathe for a second.
And that's basically what I'm saying. If you're the kind of person who can take a step back and breathe and just enjoy the fun movie, you will like this. This movie's very fun.
It is a lot of fun. It was a good adventure. I had to make a lot of jokes on it while we were watching it, but as the time went on, it was harder and harder to make those jokes because it was just quality. It was just fun.
He was contractually obligated to pretend to hate the movie because I like the movie, and thus he has to hate it.
Well, and it's one of our Patreon reviews, and man, the track record on those is not spectacular.
It is up and down.
This is also the first non-science fiction Patreon review we've had since, like, What We Do in the Shadows.
Which is neat.
That's very fascinating to me. Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I could see those places where young me would have attached harder onto characters or situations or scenes. It was almost like it was calling up a nostalgia that didn't exist.
It feels... I mean, I obviously can't speak to this fully because it does feel nostalgic. I have nostalgia for this movie. I watched it when I was a small child. But it feels nostalgic already, I guess is the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah.
It's very classic.
Yeah, and I think the old Hollywood stuff helps bake that in. It also, I did want to mention, the longer the movie goes on, the more it switches from that old Hollywood send-up to what was, at the time, in 1999, modern film sensibilities. And I think that's a good call, too.
Yeah, you start with the the basis, and then you go into the more big action as you go, and that helps bridge people into the movie.
One of the things I think is pretty interesting is that a lot of the characters are more, shall we say, neutrally aligned than I expected. Even Imhotep isn't like a bad guy necessarily.
He is the bad guy, and he's doing bad guy things.
But they spend a good 20 minutes setting up that he was simply a lover of someone who was taken by an unfair ruler and, paid his comeuppance for being that.
He was a man who shot his shot, and it didn't work out for him.
There, but for the grace of fighting a mummy, could have been Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, a lot of the main characters, I think that the most good aligned, if you will, is Evie. I think she's the least selfish.
But even she is like a little myopic, a little self-centered, a little...
Can't wait to take these Egyptian relics from my British Museum.
Yeah, it was the 1920s.
Sure. But I appreciate that, actually. It's not hard to get behind. Okay, so I make these criticisms all the time. This is a great contrast, honestly. Because this is a really good movie, but no one said it had to be. See The Mummy that came out in 2017 or whatever.
Where they chose to make it crap instead, for some reason.
These characters aren't necessarily heroes. And this is a line I think that... what's that one Star Wars movie?
What happens in it?
It's spoilers.
That one's Rogue One.
Rogue One. This is something Rogue One I don't think does as well, even though I also enjoyed that movie. These are shades of gray people all up and down. At times I was rooting for people who were obviously the villain because, like, from their perspective, they hadn't really done anything wrong. They were just kind of assholes.
And the movie does a good job. Like you said, Imhotep is not, a cackling, mustache-twirling, I'm trying to take over the world villain. He's a man who was stuck in the time of his, existence, and had loved someone he wasn't allowed, and that brought him low. And when he comes back to immortal life and invincibility, his literal driving goal, the whole movie, is to right that wrong. Is to bring back his love and just live with her. Just get to be with the woman he loves. That's a perfectly reasonable goal. Now we're rooting against Imhotep because he is trying to kill Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, and that's not allowed.
Yeah, and he definitely goes too far in a lot of places, but they also don't make... Brendan Fraser's not like a superhero.
No, he's a shithead.
But he's also easy to get behind.
Because he's charming and charismatic and a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Not like a great guy, not a hero, but a pretty good guy.
Even Benny, like,
But Benny is the one scumfuck in the movie.
He's sniveling and conniving, but, like, he's got so much charm.
Yeah, he's so charming. It's such an amazing performance.
You can see why Brendan Fraser hasn't killed him yet.
Yeah, because, like, yeah, he's a sniveling coward, and yeah, he'll betray you at the first opportunity, but god damn it if he's not charming while he does it.
And I will also praise this film because the CGI holds up a lot better than you'd expect.
Not true of the second movie. But yes, this movie CGI is, I mean, it's noticeable. It's CGI from 1999. It's not like it's invisible. But it feels fine. It doesn't take you out of the movie. It's not, oh.
Yeah, it's aged, obviously, but it isn't garish. It's not out of place.
It feels like this is one of those movies that was bridging into that era of CGI where it was obviously CGI, but it was good enough that, like, it wasn't a stunt show. It was just effects.
It doesn't harm your suspension of disbelief any more than a Harryhausen skeleton would.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, back in the day when Harryhausen was doing stuff, people were like, wow, those are real. That's a real live skeleton. How did they animate the dead? I'm scared.
Apparently, the movies were very confusing.
Look, some folks have simple minds. It is what it is, I guess. Is there anything that you would like to... This is one of those times, the trick, right, listener? The problem is that when we like something, unless we just turn it into... Which is not available on the channel anymore, I don't think. The legendary Guardians of the Galaxy podcast, where the first time we saw Guardians, we just came home and said all the lines from the movie and talked about how great it was. When we like something, it can often be difficult to talk about it without nitpicking it to death. And I honestly don't have that many nitpicks here.
Yeah, another movie we watched recently, which isn't getting a podcast, is the movie Ratatouille.
Sure.
There's a line in that movie that I've seen written many times. I've never heard it before I watched the movie. Yes, we're going through old movies right now, okay? It just happens to be that way. But there's a line from Anton Ego, a critic in the movie. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. And, as it turns out, to listen to. It is not as good of a content unit if we just sit here and blab about how great something was, because it gets repetitive and boring. So it's important to try and find some contrast. And
if there's not a lot of contrast...
It was just a good, fun movie that didn't really and you can hear me, like, in the previous bits of the podcast you're listening to at this exact moment, reach for things which someone might criticize that I personally don't. Because I just like this movie. It's just a good movie.
So there's a certain amount of, like... I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this because that's not the show we run. But, like, you want to do better in the modern era. If I were casting this movie today, there would be a lot more Egyptian people in it.
Yeah, but in the 90s...
We didn't know that back then. Don't hold that against the movie. It's not like they did it maliciously. We just weren't as aware of things, weren't as willing to, unfortunately, as the case is, take risks. And, like, that we can do that now is awesome, but don't be mean to The Mummy about it and similar sentiments.
Now, to be fair, the movie does, it has several... most of the characters in the movie aren't, like, the speaking roles, aren't intended to be Egyptian.
A lot of them aren't, correct.
They're British people and Americans. But, like, some of them are.
And they do cast a lot of people from the Middle East and that general area.
I wouldn't dream to guess at the, like, ethnic backgrounds of various actors, but... There were only, like, a couple people who seemed glaringly out of place. I'll put it like that.
I think they did a good job for the era. I think they deserve commendation for what they did in the era. But, like,
if we are scratching the bottom of the barrel for stuff to complain about, that is definitely something you could point out. Hey, we could have done better here, folks.
Yeah. And, I mean, the general sentiment, the message that it's cool to take artifacts from dead people who aren't looking at the moment and put them in your museum. It's not, though. Like, that's not...
So generally, in today we have determined that that's actually not okay to do. Well, and, I say we... everyone except the people who have all of the old artifacts have determined that's actually not okay to do.
And a lot of it was a lack of information. I mean, we thought the Mayans were gone, as an example. We thought they didn't exist anymore.
That's just like old Dave's house.
Yeah.
we've lived here the whole time.
Mayan Dave, he's right there.
But like it's a lot of things. It was, at the time that these things were happening. This is a deep in the weeds conversation. This is not podcast material. I'm pulling the ripcord on it.
Yeah, to summarize so that you're not left a little cucked here, it was a different time, and that's not an excuse for it being a different time. We need to do better today, absolutely. But that they did the best they could at the time, I feel like. It wasn't revolutionary, but damn, they put in a real good effort to meet standards that they had no idea were going to be the case. So kudos to you on that, and try to take a sip of water when you do this stuff. We were listening to Bob Rivers' Twisted Christmas CDs, making cookies at my mom's house the other day. And I remember growing up listening to those and laughing and having a good time. Listening to them today, you fucking tug on my tie, yikes. Not all of them, but some of them make me go a little, ooh.
Whoa.
But, that it was different. And, I have changed. Obviously, I can see that wasn't a cool thing to do. But, yeah, I'm not going to, call up Bob Rivers and tell him to get fucked, over old 30-year-old stuff. The only other nitpicks I have about the movie, there is a monster that lives in me that wants every movie to be 90 minutes because I'm impatient and it's hard for me to sit down and watch a film. I've
seen this movie before, so at several points during the movie I was like, oh, a cool scene's coming up. Looks over, White is literally actively on his cell phone. Okie dokie. Look back.
I was looking at stuff about the movie, and I was making a lot of effort to pay attention. Honestly, I didn't play any games or, passively scroll social media. Every time I picked up the phone, I was like, I think I know that actor. And looked into their past a little bit and went, okay, that's enough. The movie's happening.
I know my friend. This is not a judgment on him.
No, I don't think I missed anything because I was trying really hard not to. There was a moment where I thought I did, where Rachel Weisz walks out of the library and into the next room, and I looked away and looked back, and it looks like she's deep in a tomb, and I'm like, what happened? But then they panned out, and they were just relics, and it was an otherwise normal room. Yeah, you could have maybe trimmed out some stuff to make it a shorter movie if your goal was to make a shorter movie. But the stuff that you could have trimmed was really fun, and I don't think it needed to be trimmed.
And, I mean, at the time, you wouldn't want a shorter movie.
No.
For this era of box office, a shorter movie would have been considered, cheap.
People would have used it as a reason to write the film off. Oh,
yeah.
You could only make it to 90 minutes? I see.
Our sensibilities have changed a little bit since then. Not a lot.
Well, and this is a personal thing for me. A lot of movies these days are a good 3 hours.
Yeah, and, look, you got... And I understand there's a demon in you that's they've lingered on this shot of this person's face for more than 0.5 seconds. Cut, you bastards.
They didn't even do that. There were scenes that didn't contribute that much to the plot. But they were fun, or they were funny, or they were interesting.
Setting something up for later.
Sure.
By contrast, don't really think there's any fat on this movie to cut.
I wouldn't even call it fat.
I don't think there's anything you can cut from this movie that won't detract from it. Either tone or something or cutting it will make the movie make less sense, or will fuck up the pacing. I don't think The Mummy is a perfect movie.
No.
I think some of the performances of some of the, shall we say, secondary actors are a little hacky.
The Americans were a little phoned in.
Yeah, they weren't giving it They were giving it 100%. They were giving a solid 85.
Not my boy Kurt Russell, though. He was
Now,
spectacular.
to be fair, the role they would have been given called for 85%.
Sure, yeah.
They were given a script that was an 85% script, and they met that remit. But some of the secondary actors, their performances were a little hacky. I love it because it feels like it fits in the movie. But that if I had to find something in the actual movie that I could criticize, it'd be that. It would be that, like, the movie doesn't really do a whole lot of introspection about the fact that it is the protagonist's fault that this is happening at all. And without them there, it literally would not have... None of the people would have died. Except those 3 guys who got acided.
Well, and in that way as well, that might be subtle messaging, don't fuck with the hole.
I would say it's not subtle. I would say the don't fuck with the hole, leave the ancient relics where they fucking belong. And maybe listen to the indigenous cultures who are saying, hey, don't fuck with our shit. Stop that. That is very clearly centerpieced in the movie as the right and correct thing they should have done the whole time, and then they have to correct that mistake.
There's only one other thing that I would have tweaked about the movie. What is that character's name? He's not on the short list here. The old British pilot. It's like Walter or something. Winston. Yeah, it's a Churchill reference. They set up Winston, who comes into play later to help them with his plane. About halfway through the movie, a little before. I would have had him come in a lot earlier.
Whereas I love him, but I honestly don't. If he hadn't had any setup at all, it would have been fine.
Yeah, it would have been. They would have just found a guy. But I like the setup and payoff. I recognize what they were doing when he showed up. I just would have liked it to happen earlier in the movie, so I could have had a chance to forget about him.
And you'd be like, oh, Winston!
Yeah, this feels like a complete thing and not, a well-executed, oh, wait, we need to mention Winston.
Not I was a pilot, I'm old and want to die. This man will show up again in roughly 20 minutes.
If it was during a part of the movie that was relaxed, where we're all having a good time, then it
That's just a kooky character who shows up.
Yeah, he's just sort of a weird guy.
We are not relaxed when Winston shows up.
No.
And thus it is him basically looking at the audience and going, hey guys, there's going to be a plane scene later. Get hype.
That wall of sand? Cool trick.
It's a very well exes, bastard.
But like that's it. That's the complaints I have. After we finished watching this film and during it, it reminded me of a way better executed version of Black Adam. It has a similar, unfortunate character in Imhotep compared to Black Adam. It's got a lot of gray morality.
And not surprisingly so, a lot of the old adventure movies, none of the characters are super good. Even Indiana Jones. We can get into the details. Indy's not a great guy.
Well, it's the Han Solo thing, right? Han Solo's a scoundrel. He's
done some bad things. He's worked for some bad people.
Yeah.
You get the sense that Rick O'Connell has lived a life. He's charming, he's funny, but he's also a hard dude.
Look, he was in prison for a reason.
Yeah.
He had a lot of fun.
They were going to hang him.
And that was a pretty cool scene. It reminded me of a not quite as good Pirates of the Caribbean.
I would honestly say that's a really good comparison.
Yeah.
I've long held those two as a comparison in my head. They're the same. Take a very simple concept, make it a fun movie.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I don't think it ever got as big as Pirates, and you had Brendan Fraser, not Johnny Depp, as your lead actor. And that's not a problem. It's just different.
It's a different energy.
So, yeah, I'm talking about this film in, comparison to being coworkers with, as it were, colleagues, Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a franchise I love. So yeah, I have high praise for it. Even if I wouldn't say this is one of my favorites, it absolutely deserves the legacy it's cultivated over the last 20 years, 30?
25 years.
Okay, 25. That's okay. I'm okay with 25. I've seen what Brendan Fraser looks like these days.
That's about 25 years.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you, Rob, for recommending this. I'm glad I finally got to see it. Had an excuse to see it is a better way to put it. We figured out that the reason I never saw The Mummy is I had a friend who had seen The Mummy and then came to my house and told me the entire plot of The Mummy. So, like, I didn't bother. I had already seen a shittier version of the film. I wasn't going to pay for it.
And in the spirit of the season, to that friend, I wish you a very fuck you.